I want to know how you got into the whole like macabre drag thing, because I feel like there's a lot of people into sort of like this.
I was the first.
Creep. Yeah. Like, just tell me a little bit about just your inspirations.
Actually, it's one of those things where when I was a kid and I loved horror movies and I knew I was queer from a really young age, I thought, my idea of the gay stereotype was what was fed to me, by the media. So like Lamar from Revenge of the Nerds. I mean, I loved
oh my God.
I loved gays and I loved gay stereotypes. But I was actually more attracted to Norman Bates, Buffalo Bill, Leatherface. I thought Freddy Krueger was very sassy. And I was just always really into dark things. I grew up watching Elvira every week on TV, and really, most little boys feel things when they watch Elvira, whereas I felt like I wanted to be Elvira. It was like the kind of stuff that I was most into was always spooky.
And you have had the pleasure of working with her lately, which is so exciting.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, Elvira called me about a year ago and said, hey, I want to do... Our original idea that she pitched to me, which I loved, was Peaches and Elvira doing basically a Siskel and Ebert horror movie review show. And so that's actually something we're still working on. So if there's any networks out there that want to finance this, and actually there has been some interest, but because of the internet, review shows are a lot tougher. So we ended up switching gears and doing a call for independent horror movies. So it was called Elvira's Horror Hunt with your co-hostess, Peaches Christ. And so Elvira and I actually just did the film festival in Indianapolis at the big Horror Hound convention, and then one of the feature filmmakers and one of the short filmmakers who won, they got flown to Los Angeles, and we hosted a giant red carpet premiere. And my favorite part of this, as an obsessed Elvira fan growing up, is that Elvira's idea for Peaches and Elvira to show up at this big red carpet fancy premiere was for me to get into the passenger seat of the Macabre mobile,
cool.
Which she then drove us to the theater.
That's so cool!
It was surreal.
Were all of your
in the Macabre mobile, I'm in the Macabre mobile looking over, and there's Elvira driving.
That's so surreal. That's so awesome.
I can die a happy tran.
That's so cool. Yeah. And so are there the fans that come to that kind of thing, are they the Trekkies, but they're kind of like the Macabres or something?
Horror's interesting because obviously I traffic in horror and genre, and on one hand there's this sort of history of queerness, Dr. Frankenfurter, and I think even Divine to some degree was, those early John Waters movies. You watch Desperate Living, and it's basically a horror movie. It's a horror fantasy. But somehow there's this segment of macho guys that don't really want queerness mixed in with their horror. So I would say that, and sci-fi. John Waters called my event heteroflexible.
Yay! That's good.
He was like, I've been to a lot of drag shows, but yours, it's heteroflexible.
It's and
I knew exactly what he meant, which
That's
is
awesome.
the kind of fans. There are really great genre fans, and it doesn't have to be misogynist assholes who love horror movies. There can be really smart, cool, fun, whether they're straight, gay, whatever. And so there are those folks out there. And I think, in a sense, what we try to do, with Silence of the Trans and movies like that, or Silence of the Lambs and our pre-shows, is kind of to create a space for everyone to celebrate the movies, but where assholes shouldn't show up. That's kind of the idea. We live in a town where I was able to do something like Midnight Mass, and it was nurtured, not just by one group of people, but a lot of people supported it over the years. And same with, Suppository is the hardest working drag queen in town. I mean, the fact that she can do 23 gigs in 4 days is it's a
amazing.
Pretty special city that supports that kind of calendar. And so I do think that the challenge for people in other places, like when I go to Indianapolis, so you're going to a horror convention, I'm in full drag, and it's a totally different experience. So it's always nice to come back home. Labels matter there, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And there are certainly people who are completely threatened by All About Evil, threatened by me being a director of horror that does drag, they don't like it. So I'm really always grateful to be able to come home and create stuff here, and then go out and you know, kind of try to, I don't know, corrupt people or whatever.